Hello, I'm Allison Fromm, Chief Commercial Officer at ProofSpace, and I'm excited to talk about what self-sovereign identity is and why you should care. So we're going to jump into the presentation, and the agenda that I'll follow will start with talking about what identity is, problems with digital identity, how self-sovereign identity provides the solution to those problems, and I'll end with a brief description of ProofSpace's SSI Identity Hub. So before I begin, I want to make a brief disclaimer that there are lots of ways to talk about and think about identity. For the purposes of this presentation, to get to the mechanics of the technology of self-sovereign identity, we're going to focus on a very narrow definition of identity. So we'll define identity as an identifier plus a credential. So let's dive into what each of those means. In the real world, identifiers are locally created, decentralized, locally maintained, and unique. So some examples to bring those words to life. Your name is the most common, your signature, and your fingerprint. It's certainly locally created and decentralized and unique. So credentials in the real world are issued by many sources. They're physically held in the owner's physical wallet. And because of that, they're controlled by the owner. They're controlled by you. You know when you take a credential out of your wallet, like your driver's license or your health insurance card, and you show it to someone. Other examples of real-world credentials could be your passport or even your diploma, although that's a bit harder to fit in your wallet, but it's still a piece of paper, typically, that you own and control. So what is digital identity? Well, when we moved from the real world to the online Web 2.0 world, we found that credentials don't work. You can't share your fingerprint online, and nobody knows if the name you're using is really you. So the solution is to create a virtual account that's provided and owned by a company. And each account has a username and a password. And the company providing the account maintains account records centrally. They own that account. And as a result, you don't exist online without access to that account. So there are some problems with digital identity, many of which we're familiar with. The first one, which everybody knows, is that we have to maintain an ever-increasing number of passwords. The average person is expected to remember over 100 passwords, and that number is only growing. So people use easy-to-guess passwords because they have way too many to remember. But of course, easy-to-guess passwords are therefore very easy to steal. There are also big incentives for thieves to go after our data because companies are amassing bigger and bigger and bigger stockpiles of all this valuable personal data. To give just an example, in 2017, Yahoo announced 3 billion accounts were hacked. 294 million people had their data compromised. And in general, the average data breach costs $3.86 million. One solution to the password mess is that people use credentials from one site, like Google, to log into another site. But that only increases the risk of theft as the central store of our personal data only grows larger and larger. As a result of some of this activity, we're losing a lot of privacy. Private companies are monitoring and tracking our behavior as we navigate across the web. And most people, and even probably most organizations, have little understanding or regulation of this surveillance. And if you want an absolutely chilling view of the power these tech platforms have over our data, I suggest reading Uncanny Valley, a memoir. So this is not a great picture. Luckily, and of course, there's a solution, and it's a growing industry that's been calling itself self-sovereign identity. So what does that mean? Well, if in the real world, identifiers are locally created, locally maintained, and unique, self-sovereign identity uses something called DIDs, Decentralized Identifiers. And these are numbers that are locally created by a user's device and a software program. So you create a DID, a decentralized identifier, using some software on your phone. Because you create it, it's locally maintained. It is absolutely unique to you using some mathematical and cryptographical tricks. And it serves as a cryptographically generated fingerprint. It's just like your fingerprint. No one else has it. No one else knows it unless you share it with them, and it's controlled and owned by you. So in the real world, credentials are issued by many sources, held in the owner's physical wallet, and therefore controlled by the owner. With self-sovereign identity, verifiable credentials, or VCs, are issued by many sources, and they're held in the owner's electronic identity wallet. And because they're held in the owner's personal wallet, the owner controls and monitors the data sharing. This leads to the solution to some of the problems we were talking about, beginning with a reduction in password chaos. Users can maintain one seed phrase to control their DIDs, protected often by one password, but within that digital wallet, they can hold lots of different VCs. And a digital wallet can create many DIDs, decentralized identifiers, all linked to the same seed phrase. That data is stored locally on the user's personal device. So this could mean that many companies who don't want large amounts of personal data no longer have to ask for it. And of course, no device is ever completely safe from any thief breaking into it. But if a thief hacks into your phone, they only get one person's data. So this really reduces the incentive for these thieves to go after millions and billions of records. In time, this could lead to a reduction in the amount companies need to spend protecting data, especially data that companies end up collecting that they don't really want or need. And just to give one example, the Equifax data breach in the US cost that company $1.4 billion due to the hack of data from 147 million members. Because credentials, VCs, are stored locally in the user's wallet, the user, the owner, controls how they're shared and how they're used. And an owner's wallet will log and track every data exchange, so the user knows exactly what's happening to the data and who's looking at it. And using cryptography, in some cases, verifiers can even confirm that a credential is valid without having to access the data itself. So there is a lot of privacy protection that comes from using this technology. And users control their own data. Users can maintain peer-to-peer connections and no longer need to rely on third-party accounts or platforms. Because the data is standardized, users can take their data, and because it's controlled and owned and held individually by the user, they can take their data to a new platform. And using a separate DID for each interaction, for each company, for each platform, means that companies can no longer easily track or monitor our behavior. So to take an analogy from the blockchain world, self-sovereign identity, SSI, does for identity what Bitcoin did for money. If you think about the legacy finance world, the bank controls the account. You can't have an account in the legacy finance world unless a bank gives it to you. The revolution of Bitcoin was that any person could create their own decentralized wallet and start using the network without needing to rely on a third party. So with the legacy internet, you don't exist online without an account that's provided to you by a third party, by a company. The revolution of SSI is that you can have your own decentralized identity that's generated and controlled by you. However, there's one really important distinction to make with the blockchain industry. Individual personal information is not stored on any blockchain. I've said a number of times, DIDs, decentralized identifiers, and VCs, verifiable credentials, are stored locally on a local device, typically a phone. So then why do we need the blockchain? The blockchain holds a record of public issuer DIDs, so the decentralized identifier of the public entities that are going to issue verifiable credentials, because that data is important for verification. And the blockchain holds encrypted info used to verify that a VC was issued, but not the details about the VC itself. In other words, it's sort of the key to the verifiable credential, and it's useless unless the user chooses to present the verifiable credential, and then the key can be used to check the authenticity of the data and the issuer. But even with the best decryption technology in the world, if somebody got the key on the blockchain, it would tell them absolutely nothing, no personal information, unless the owner of the credential chose to share that credential directly. So this all sounds great. How do we get started using this technology? Luckily, ProofSpace provides a very easy way to take that first step. We simplify the technical decisions, we reduce implementation costs, we allow very easy integration into existing systems, we make your ongoing costs predictable, we build in interoperability, we pay attention to the evolving standards and ensure adherence to them, and we provide an excellent user experience, both for the company and for the user. So how do we do that? We have a library of identity protocols, all wrapped with no-code tools. They're easy to implement, fully interoperable, and allow reusability of credentials, leading to massive network effects. So what does that mean? We provide a web dashboard where issuers can design whatever kind of credential or workflow they want and issue those credentials to their end users who use the ProofSpace app to hold and present their credentials. And then verifiers can use the very easy ProofSpace dashboard to check those credentials. And all of this happens without any coding being required, but we have APIs and webhooks to connect to issuer and verifier backends. So thank you very much for taking the time to explore this revolutionary and fascinating world of self-sovereign identity. If you have any additional questions about how our technology could get your SSI project started, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much for spending the time with me today.